Yeah, Sarah, the post-development criticism exists over 30 years already. Has it failed?
Well, I think that what we can see from the conference we've just had is that post-development, even if the debates have moved on, it's galvanizing a lot of energy, it's creating a lot of conversations which are very important in moving it in new directions. I think that by, inevitably post-development, because it takes a very clear stance against development as usual, it inevitably is going to generate critical responses from people who feel that it has or is failing to really engage with the issues that mainstream institutions feel are the issues that they feel are important and they put front and centre in their own policies. So obviously, paradigms change and names change, but I think the important thing is that critical engagement continues, nurtured and enriched by engagement with other fields as time goes on.
Mm-hmm. How can the post-development lenses or glasses somehow help us to make sense of the current global order? What would you say?
Right. Well, post-development includes in its critique an important reminder that policy that names itself as neutral or automatically positive is in itself worth looking at through a critical lens. Mm-hmm. And I think that if we address the current world crisis, which we can see as one of inequality, practices of damage to the ecosystems, the creation of anthropogenic change, then we have very powerful understandings of the processes going on in the world. But post-development makes us stop and think about the ways that efforts to intervene, which apparently aim to improve those big problems, are in themselves sometimes providing just a bandage over those problems, and so the post-development is not an analysis of everything. It would not be helpful if it were. It's rather that it takes a different stance with regard to policies between the global north and international institutions and poorer countries of the world.
Mm-hmm. What would be your next 3 steps to maybe post-developmentalize the development apparatus, or what would be the alternative for you?
Well, for me, I am particularly thinking about the decolonial element at the moment. So if I can address that aspect. I think that the decolonising has an agenda of changing the way that we think about knowledge production and teach in universities, and those kinds of questions mean that the kind of critical thinking that's being done in post-development now has allies and has, connections to efforts to decolonise not just development studies but also sociology, anthropology, geography, and so on, and that those wider coalitions, those wider conversations, I think, are really important in decolonising. And that, another point about the next step, I think that taking individual responsibility for our contribution to anthropogenic change is very significant. Not just stopping flights, but thinking about how many times in a decade we change our mobile phones and how much we rely on food coming in, or how much our country exports its carbon emissions by bringing in goods manufactured elsewhere. Those are really important things. The third aspect is something that I've been thinking about recently, which is the question of how we overcome racism and racist discrimination, in part through turning the question onto the privilege and position that people like myself have in our institutions, and in the way that we can design curriculum, or the way that we can do research, or the way that we can interact with people.
Yeah, thank you for this very concrete proposals. And maybe as a last question, what would you hope to gain or to get out of academic gatherings such as this conference about post-development where we are right now?
Right. Okay. So, I mean, the what would I get out of a conference? I go to conferences selectively when I feel like I will learn things that will be of interest to me in my thinking at the moment. But I also have to think, is there something that I can contribute that is both affirming what other people are having in their conversations, perhaps adding something somewhat new. I think also more broadly, the kinds of conversations that one has at a conference are really wonderful for bringing home the importance of certain ideas to that link people across different places, across different settings and contexts and so on. And of course it does make a difference in the teaching. It then it informs the kind of things I share and want to tell my students about as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Very welcome. That was very straightforward.
Yeah.